Hello, Neogenians. Welcome to Dawn of the New Earth. Now, I recently put out a video all about the Gospel of Judas and how it reveals that the 12 disciples and the 12 signs of the Zodiac are associated with the 12 Archons, aka the gods of chaos, basically demons. So they didn't have a very positive view on these things. They thought the disciples were evil and whatnot. However, today we're going to go further because there is a much more complex way to look at this when we start digging through the various Gnostic texts. Because not only are there 12 gods of chaos, 12 Archons, but there are also 12 Eons. So we're going to take a look at that relationship today, and most importantly, see how this sort of polarity between Archon and Eon is something that affects and exists within us. So this is going to be really good. I'm really excited to talk about this with you guys. But as always, hey, I want to remind you, we are not a channel. We are a revolution of consciousness here to wake the world the hell up and make higher consciousness go viral. We are literally reaching millions with information that the church tried to bury and burn out of existence. But now we're spreading like fire. So make sure you hit like, subscribe, and share to get this information out to the minds that need to understand it. If you want to help out even more, you can become a member and get access to a lot of great stuff like downloads on inner transformation, alchemy, Kabbalah, etc. You can also get access to our members only videos at the Pathfinder tier. We have a ton of members only videos. They're really great. And we're actually having a live recording of one right after this that you can be a part of, called Genesis Never Says That Humanity Fell. So what really happened in Eden? So if you become a member, you get access to great stuff and it helps out the channel a lot. You can also check out my books. I am a neogenian and I've written a 5-part book series on the neogenian system. And if you're looking for a free way to support, a great way to support is by following me on Spotify. I do have a Spotify channel. And when you follow me on there, it's completely free to do, by the way. It helps us reach a ton of new people, a new audience. Currently, we're reaching over 10,000 over there. So we want to grow even more, reach more people. So go follow me. The links to all those things, Spotify, my memberships, my books, they're all in the description of this video. Okay, but enough of that. Let's get started on what the hell are the 12 Eons in their relationship to the 12 Archons and the 12 signs of the Zodiac and even the 12 disciples. And most importantly, why the hell you should care. Because this isn't just, learning cool ancient stories. It describes the structure of energy that is within all of us that we need to balance. So let's talk about this. We saw that in the Gospel of Judas, Jesus associates the 12 disciples with the 12 Archons. Now, who are the 12 Archons? So Yaldabaoth, the demiurge, the false creator, well, he is a creator, but the false god, the demiurge, he creates 12 beings from himself. Basically, you know how the one emanates entities? The demiurge kind of does the twisted version of that and produces 12 sons from himself. But they are androgynous. It says the first is Athoth. The second is Harmas, called the Eye of Flame. The third is Kalila Umbri. The fourth is Yabel. The fifth is Adonai, also called Sabaoth. The sixth is Abel. The seventh is Cain, called the sun. The eighth is Abrazine. The ninth is Yobel. The 10th is Armupiel. The 11th is Melchior Adonai. And the 12th is Belias. You don't need to know these names. The point is, he creates 12 bad dudes. And it says that he established them over the planetary spheres, essentially, the celestial spheres. 7 of them to rule the heavens, and then 5 of them to rule over the abyss, the depths of the abyss, which perhaps is referring to the material world on Earth. You can take a look at the 7 as corresponding to the 7 planets, and the remaining 5 as twisted versions of the elements: ether, air, water, wind, and fire. That makes it makes good sense symbolically, but that's more of a modern interpretation. In the actual text, it doesn't literally say these 5 ruled over the elements. Who ruled over the elements literally according to this text was Cain and Abel. But in fact, it says that those were false names. Their real names are Elohim and Yahweh. And Yahweh rules over water and earth, and Elohim rules over fire and air. I believe. I may have swapped the ordering there, but I'm pretty sure that that's right. So, long story short, though, doesn't matter. You got 12 Archons. And it's pretty well agreed upon that the 12 Archons are associated with the 12 signs of the Zodiac. It's never said directly, oh, these are the Zodiac signs, but it's pretty obvious when you start looking at all the correspondences, which we'll get into some of them today. So you have the 12 Archons. But here's the interesting thing. So you have Yaldabaoth, the demiurge, who creates these 12 Archons from himself. But before the demiurge was even born, you have the One, the source of all reality in the domain of pure light. Now, in the domain of pure light is generated the mother-father, which is Barbelo, the mother and the father, and the sun. From the sun emanates 4 beings called luminaries. And these are Harmazel, Davathai, Auroriel, and Aleleth. And then finally, from these 4 luminaries emanate 12 eons. So you don't have to understand that whole hierarchy. Long story short is eventually from the one generates 12 eons. The shadow version of that is the demiurge who generates 12 archons. And we looked at some of their names. Now let's look at the names of the eons. The names of the eons are grace, truth, form, conceptualization, perception, memory, understanding, love, idea, perfection, peace, and wisdom. Wisdom, of course, being Sophia. So you see that these are higher faculties of mind that allow us, these are the faculties of mind that allow us to connect us to the source and our higher selves. Conceptualization, perception, memory, understanding, love, wisdom, grace, truth. These are higher faculties that allow us to connect with the divine source and our own higher self, our soul. So then we have the 12 archons, right? But here, so we have this sort of already, we have this reflection of the 12 eons and the 12 archons. But here's another cool thing. The archons are modeled on the higher realms. So later in the text, it describes that 7 of the archons will rule over the days of the week, which are associated with planets. So the planets, right? So you have the 12 gods of chaos, who are the Zodiac, and which are the 12 archons. And then you have another set of 7 archons that rule the planets. Here's the cool thing. So the planetary rulers are Athoth, Eloios, Astaphios, Iao, Sabaoth, Adonin, and Sabatios. But here's here's the interesting part. Those names are the names given to the Archons by the Demiurge, but they have another name. So check this out. Goodness is paired with Aethoth. Providence is paired with Eloios. Divinity is paired with Astaphios. Lordship is paired with Iao. Kingdom is paired with Sabaoth. Zeal is paired with Adonin. Wisdom is paired with Sabbatios. So you have these dark archonic names paired with what seem like good names. And the texts explicitly says this, well, essentially, it says each has its own realm modeled on one of the higher realms. So their realms are modeled on the higher realms. And each of their new names, or what we can think of as good names, each of their new names refers to a glory in the heavens. So that Yaldabaoth's demons might be destroyed. The demons' own names, given by Yaldabaoth, are mighty and powerful names. But the Archons' names reflecting the glory above, their positive names, will bring about the demons' destruction and remove their power. That is why each has two names. So the idea is basically that the Archons have this, they're modeled on the higher realms, so they're very powerful, created as servants of the Demiurge, but because they're modeled on the higher realms, they contain goodness, wisdom, zeal, divinity, lordship, etc. And the idea is that essentially that's kind of like an antivirus program that they will ultimately sort of be destroyed from the inside out because of that they're modeled on the higher realms. So that's what the Secret Book of John says. Let's keep this in the back of our minds because we're going to see how this all connects. I just sort of need to lay out the big picture for you, and then we're going to take a look at a very interesting interpretation for this. So then in the Gospel of Judas, Jesus says this to the disciples. But when Jesus, combination of Jesus and Judas, when Jesus noticed their ignorance, the disciples' ignorance, he said to them, "Why are you letting your anger trouble you? Has your God within you and his stars become angry with your souls?" So we've seen that your God, not Christ's God, their God, the Demiurge, and his stars, the 12 Archons, become angry with your souls. The stars, of course, referring to the Zodiac and the Archons. And so the 12 disciples are linked to the 12 Archons, or gods of chaos, or the Zodiac. Where Judas, Jesus calls the 13th demon, which likely refers to the Demiurge himself, Judas being a manifestation of the Demiurge's power, because it makes more, we have 12 plus the Demiurge makes 13. So that's where we get that connection there. But here's where things start to get interesting. Because remember, we've seen like a lot of correspondences between Archons and Eons. And they have this kind of duality. Now let's look at something called the First Apocalypse of James, one of my favorite Gnostic texts. And this is a Valentinian Gnostic text. So what we just read from the Secret Book of John, that was Sethian. Sethian Gnosticism. This is Valentinian Gnosticism. And they're similar in a lot of ways, but they're different in some very important areas. And Valentinianism is actually way healthier than Sethianism. And I'll tell you why. So, Sethians basically look at the demiurge as being purely evil, the Archons as being evil, and they must be destroyed. And they look at the material world as a literal prison and basically like a torture chamber that you need to escape from. So, for example, they believed that sex was bad because you were having children, which meant trapping more souls into the material world. There's a lot of unhealthy things that come from this mindset, like that being one of them, as well as you're not balancing your shadow and a variety of other things. So the Sethian view is they have great stories, really cool stories, but not the healthiest. The Valentinians had a different perspective. They saw the demiurge and the Archons as being not purely evil, but ordering forces of the cosmos that became ignorant and arrogant. So not just like, oh, pure evil, but more like ordering forces that got really confused. So while you can look at, from the Sethian perspective, the material world is evil and a prison run by demons and the devil, basically, Valentinian Gnosticism said it's more like the material world is neutral territory that got taken over by a regime that became corrupt. The government of that neutral territory became a dictatorship, let's say. So in Gnosticism, or in Valentinian Gnosticism, what's really cool about this is that the demiurge is actually redeemable. And according to Valentinian Gnosticism, he does redeem himself when he meets Christ. So in Sethian Gnosticism, the demiurge hates Jesus and crucifies him, and does everything in his power to stop Jesus. But in Valentinianism, when the demiurge views Christ, he realized that he's been fucking up this whole time, and he starts to become joyful, and then serves the light and becomes sort of a protector of humanity. So he's redeemable, right? Not pure evil, but redeemable. And you'll see that throughout that theme of redemption throughout the first apocalypse of James. So James is Jesus's brother. And in the text itself, Jesus reveals that James used to work for the demiurge. But he realized when he saw Christ, when he awakened, he stopped praying to the demiurge and served the light. So he was redeemed. So you'll notice this, Sethianism is very strict. This is good, this is bad. Valentinian, disciples are evil. Valentinianism is more fluid in that there are simply forces that got out of control. The demiurge and the archons, they got out of control, but they're not necessarily inherently evil. They're just dumb and power hungry, essentially. And individuals who work for the demiurge, like James, can be redeemed. Now, we have some bits of this in certain Sethian material, like on the origin of the world, where the son of Yaldabaoth, Sabaoth, actually sees Sophia and loves the realm of the light and then rebels against his father. So we have a little bit of that, but it's not much. Valentinianism emphasizes it a lot more. And this is a much healthier view of things because it allows us to approach the darkness not in a way that's purely evil, but as misaligned energy. So let's talk about this. In the first apocalypse of James, James says, "Rabbi, behold, I have discovered the number of the archons. There are 72 pairs." Okay, first of all, what the hell? 12? Well, I thought there were 12 archons and then 7 archons, and where's 72 coming from? Well, we'll get to that. We'll get to where there's 72. But before we do, notice he says 72 pairs. Now, it doesn't explicitly say why that is, but it could be things always come in pairs in Gnosticism, even the bad guys, because of maintaining balance in some way or another. So either it's just that, like maybe each Archon has a masculine part and a feminine part, but it could be that, like we saw in the Secret Book of John, Archons have a heavenly name. So it could also be an allusion to that. But notice, what I'm trying to get across here is notice this constant theme of what's reflected in darkness, or what is in darkness, is a reflection of the light. So it's in a sense, it's still connected to the light in some way. So Jesus explains how the cosmic hierarchy works. He says there are 72 heavens. Now, heavens, he doesn't mean like the source or the pleroma. He means the demiurge's heavens. Likely, anyway. Likely he means that. So Jesus says, these are the 72 heavens which are under them. These are the powers of the might of all of them, and by them they were established, and these are under the authority of the 12 Archons. Okay, so the 72 heavens are ruled by 72 Archons who are all under the 12 Archons. So they're subordinates. So where does the number 72 come from? There's a lot to say about this, so let's unpack it a little bit. The demiurge's realm is called a hebdomad, which means 7. A 7-layered realm, essentially. So the demiurge is associated with the number 7. And the 12 Archons are up there in the 7th heaven, the 7th realm, or the 7th layer. So you have 12 Archons who are in the 7th, meaning they have 6 under them. And 12 times 6 is 72. So you can think of it kind of like the Archons are like 12 governors that each rule 6 districts, totaling 72 districts. But there's more to it than this. So let's connect this to astrology. So we know that the Gnostics associate 12 Archons with 12 signs of the Zodiac and another 7 Archons to the planets. But it's more interesting than this, because ancient astrologers, especially in Egypt, they divided the Zodiac into smaller sections. Each section that covered 5 degrees of the sky was ruled by its own spiritual power. And so when this text talks about 72 heavens, it's almost certainly describing the 72 subdivisions, the 72 5-degree subdivisions of the Zodiac. But here's something interesting. All right, so let's again connect this. If we go back to the Gospel of Judas, it describes the realm of light being structured in a similar way. And all this is going to come together, by the way. I know this is a lot, and you might be thinking, where the hell are you going with this? Why should I even care about this? It's going to connect. Okay, but in the Gospel of Judas, it describes the realm of light being structured in a very similar way. It says he made the incorruptible generation appear to the 12 androgynous luminaries, the 12 eons. And then he made 72 luminaries appear in the incorruptible generation according to the Spirit's will. So you have the 12 eons and the 72 luminaries, according to the Gospel of Judas, structures the realm of light. But there's more. Then the 72 luminaries themselves made 360 luminaries appear, according to the Spirit's will, so that there'd be 5 for each. 5 for each. Okay? So we have, what this is saying is that from the 12 come the 72, and from the 72 generates 360. Well, we saw that the 72 were 5 degrees of the zodiac slices. Well, what's 360? 360 degrees. It's a circle. The whole zodiac, the whole wheel, it's a circle. And so they aren't directly connecting to this to the zodiac, by the way. I'm just describing how what becomes the zodiac and the archons in the lower realms reflects the same structure, a similar structure in the higher realms. Okay? So we can think of the lower realms as distorted, corrupted versions of it. Not necessarily evil, but out of whack, out of sync. And it said that this happened according to the Spirit's will, so that there would be 5 for each. 5 for each. 5 luminaries from the 360 for each of the 72 luminaries. Again, you can see this mirroring the structure of the 5-degree sections of the 72 slices of the zodiac. So, but here it's, they're saying 5 luminaries rule under the authority of each of the 72, making 360. Which is a perfect circle. And get this, it says, and the 12 realms of the 12 luminaries make up their father, which is 6 heavens for each realm. So there are 72 heavens for the 72 luminaries. So do you see what's happening here? Is it's confirming with what we believed to be true about the 12 archons having 6 subordinate heavens. So it's saying that the 12 luminaries, the 12 eons, each have 6 heavens. And 12 times 72, and 12 times 6 is 72. So there are 72 heavens for the 72 luminaries. All right, so the main point of this is to see how the divine realm exists in a way that's similar to the lower realm, because the lower realm is modeled on it. It's a reflection of it. So just like you have the 12 archons and the 12 signs of the with the 72 archons and etc. It's a reflection of how the realm of light is structured. Now, let me throw another kind of cool thing in there. In the Secret Book of John, it says there are 365 archons who rule each day, which is in contrast to the 360 of the realms of light. Now, whether there's supposed to be a connection there, I'm not sure. But if so, it could be that, oh, the material realm is sort of like the corruption of the perfect circle. Because 365 is not 360, but it's close. So that may be what that's referencing. Could also be referencing 360 plus 5 elements: ether, air, water, spirit, ether, air, water, earth, and fire. But that's more speculation on my part. It doesn't say that anywhere. But I could see it. Since everything else connects, it seems like that possibly could connect. 365 being some kind of corruption of 360, perhaps. Anyway, but wait, there's more. So we have seen this connection between light and darkness. The darkness is structured according to the light. Now remember, the Gospel of Judas portrayed the 12 disciples as servants of the 12 Archons. And they saw the 12 Archons as purely hostile forces. And so they saw the 12 disciples as totally evil. In the Gospel of Judas, it talks about them sacrificing or killing people and leading people astray with a false message by using the name of Christ to trick people. They're totally evil. But in the Valentinian thought, the Archons aren't necessarily evil. They're more like distorted versions of the higher realm. And so the 12 disciples aren't inherently evil. So that difference is really important. So the first apocalypse of James treats the disciples in a much more complex way than the, oh, you're all fucking evil, Gospel of Judas, Sethian way. The way they talk about it is a little different, because in the Gospel or in the first apocalypse of James, Jesus says, "Behold, James, I have revealed to you what I am, and the one who is from the beginning, and the appearance of the 12 disciples, and the 72 pairs, and Sophia, and Achamat, etc." So what Jesus is essentially saying here is that the 12 disciples ultimately come from the one. Because we all come from the one. It's not like just the disciples do. All of us do. So although the Gnostics associated the disciples with the Archons, Jesus is saying that even in ignorance, they come from the one. So what it's basically describing is saying that human beings, including the disciples, even though we're from the one, and the disciples are from the one, can become entangled in the archonic patterns of ignorance, forgetfulness, and authority, while still carrying the potential to rise above them. And there's another connection here. Did you know that there were actually 72 disciples, additional disciples as well? In the Bible. In Luke 10:1, it says, "After this, the Lord chose 72 more disciples." So we have another connection here. And then in the Apocalypse of James, it says this: "And when he, James, at that time, and James went at that time immediately and rebuked the 12 disciples, and cast out of them contentment concerning the way of knowledge." So what this means is he rebuked the 12 and took them out of their contentment concerning the way of knowledge. What does contentment concerning the way of knowledge mean? It means kind of like just going with like the old interpretation or the easy interpretation. Like they're not really looking for knowledge. They are content with the distorted knowledge that they have, essentially. They're not trying to find higher knowledge. And so James rebukes them, says, you guys are fucking up, and then essentially starts to wake them up. He casts them out of their stagnant ways so that they no longer are or start to rise above it. So again, in the first apocalypse of James, you are going to see this theme of redemption again and again and again. So remember how Judas in the Gospel of Judas is associated with the demiurge and is totally evil? Well, in the first apocalypse of James, Jesus reveals to James that he used to work for the demiurge. I think I already said this. But he became, yeah, I did. But he became redeemed. So you see the difference here? Sethian, very strict. This is good, this is bad. And you're all fucked if you're serving the darkness. Valentinians are different. They're much healthier. They're like humans are caught in this sort of pull between light and dark, and they can choose one way or another. And we see this reflected in this structure of the 12 Eons and the 12 Archons and the 7 Archons that are modeled after the realms of light and have good names, and the 72 realms of light and the 72 heavens of the Archons. We see that they're very much they're reflections of each other. And basically, like, humans are caught in the middle of this. They're caught in the middle of it. They can become entangled by the distortions of the Archons, or they can tap into the higher realms of light, understanding, wisdom, perception, memory, to connect to the source and themselves, their true self. So, let me check my notes here. So, essentially what this is saying, and the text doesn't say this explicitly, but here's my interpretation. Yes, the 12 signs of the Zodiac and the 7 planets, classical planets, are linked to the Archons. But because they're modeled on the higher realms of light, we can interpret the 12 signs of the Zodiac and the 7 planets as not being totally evil, but having a corrupt side and a good side, or an archonic side, or an eonic connection. And when you take a look at this, it makes a lot of sense, because when you look at I don't think I mentioned this. I do not take astrology to be literally true. If you do, that's fine. I don't. I do not take astrology to be literally true. I believe it is a symbolic system or language that describes the psyche and allows you to connect to the unconscious. So, for example, take alchemy, for example. I talk about alchemy a lot on my channel. Am I trying to get people to turn lead into gold? No, that's dumb. When I talk about alchemy on my channel, I'm talking about the symbolic transformation of the soul from its lowest form, the lead, to its highest form, the sun. Likewise, when I talk about the 12 signs of the Zodiac and the 7 planets, I don't mean literally that Mars is producing this force that is literally influencing you, the planet. I believe that it's internal. The Zodiac and the planets are inside of you. Just like lead and gold are stages of the soul's transformation, not literally lead and gold. The planets in the zodiac are the psychological forces that exist within you. Now, to be clear, when I say psychological, it doesn't mean like, oh, just the brain. Remember, I'm a neogenian, so I look at reality as being inherently mind and the soul as being inherently mind. Psyche literally means soul, so psychology becomes the study of the soul in the true sense of the word when it's taken literally in terms of its original meaning in its Greek roots. So, yeah, I just want to be clear. I see the stars and the planets as symbolic forces that exist within you that represent archetypal forces, patterns, and they allow us to understand things symbolically and connect to our unconscious, because our unconscious communicates in language, or not language, symbols, not human language, in the way that we understand it. Connects in symbols and stories. That's why these symbols and stories are important, because it's a communication to your unconscious. Okay, so that being said, then I don't look at the 12 signs of the zodiac and the 7 planets as they represent forces in you as, oh, purely evil archonic influences. I look at them as sort of neutral. They can be archonic or can be eonic, because they're modeled after the higher realms. Remember, this is my interpretation. It doesn't literally say this, but I think that as we take a look at all the connections, the symbolism fits pretty well. And so we humans are caught in between this. And it makes sense, because when you look at like what the planets mean, they all have sort of a benevolent side and a shadow side. So when you look at Mars in its positive sense, or like its eonic sense, can represent leadership, strength, willpower. But in its shadow aspect or archonic influence, can represent wrath, anger, dominance, lust for power. So I see the zodiac and the planets as having 2 sides that represent different aspects that exist within us. Now, here's another thing that I want to say, though, is unlike the Sethians, I don't believe that the Archons need to be destroyed. Like the Valentinians, I believe that they need to be redeemed, meaning transformed. Energy cannot be created or destroyed, only transformed. So we align ourselves with Eons, and we transform Archons. Let me make a note of myself to write about this. We align ourselves with Eons and transform or redeem Archons. Okay, so we align ourselves with Eons and transform Archons, not necessarily destroy them, because energy cannot be created or destroyed, only transformed. And what this means is, take a look at, so we said that, some eonic properties are leadership, willpower. I forget what else I listed, but you know what I mean. We want to align ourselves with those qualities. We want to have strong will. We want to be leadership, be a leader. But what were the archonic qualities? Well, let's take one example: wrath, anger. Now, are those evil? Not necessarily. It depends how you use them. They can be very evil, but not necessarily. Just like a knife can be used to stab someone, or it can be used to cut bread. So when we look at something like wrath and anger, on a surface level reading, that might seem like, oh, those are evil. But guess what? Anger is what leads to some things that, like revolutions. Revolutions occur because people are angry. Beautiful art is created to express dissatisfaction and anger, and music, etc. So it's not necessarily evil in itself. It needs to be redeemed or transformed. So Lilith is a great example. Lilith is not in Gnostic lore at all. But she's a good example because Lilith is a demon. But Lilith also has come to represent rebellion, especially against patriarchal oppression. So Lilith is the force of rebellion. Rebellion can be good or bad. Was it Jefferson that said a little rebellion every now and then is a good thing? Yeah, Thomas Jefferson. A little rebellion now and then is a good thing. Yeah. Yeah, he argued that, like storms in the physical world, occasional rebellions are necessary to maintain political health and prevent government tyranny. So, we can see that the Archons aren't something that should be destroyed. They should be redeemed and transformed. So we can take a look at like Venus, for example. Venus represents love and empathy and beauty. Very Eonic. But the Archonic can be, let's say, vanity and lust. Well, is lust necessarily a bad thing? Not really. It can be. But being sexually attracted to your partner can spark things up in the bed. Of course, you want to have, basically, you can have love and lust at the same time. You can love someone and be like, damn, they look really good. That's ideal, actually. So you can get what I mean. And you could argue about the definition of lust, but I think you get the spirit of what I'm saying here, is that this intense physical attraction isn't necessarily a bad thing. It can be real bad. Don't get me wrong. It can lead to a lot of bad things. But when redeemed and transformed, it can make a relationship very healthy when coupled with its Eonic partner of love. You see, this is cool, right? Don't you think this is cool? I think this is cool. I think it's very cool. Tell me in the comments if you think this is cool. This allows us to express these ideas in a way that our unconscious can understand, so we become more aligned with them. A transformation begins to occur in our unconscious as we integrate these stories and symbols. And that affects how we act and behave in our daily life. So, long story short, is that in terms of the Zodiac and the planets, I look at them symbolically as being inner forces, and I don't look at them as being neither good nor bad. I believe they have Eonic qualities, which we align ourselves with, and Archonic qualities, which we redeem and transform. Lilith, Lilith is not in Gnosticism, But if she were in Gnosticism, she would absolutely be considered an Archon. She had a lot of sex, and the Sethians especially did not like that. And she caused a lot of chaos and havoc. But she's a very important force, a necessary one, once transformed and redeemed and directed. So we can look at the symbolism of the planets and the symbolism of the Zodiac as not being necessarily good or not necessarily being evil, but representing a force that has two poles, an Eonic pole and an Archonic pole. We align ourselves with the Eonic side and transform the Archonic side. Because remember, in Valentinian Gnosticism, the Archons aren't evil. They are ordering forces of the cosmos. They just went out of control. And the Demiurge went out of control. But guess what? When the Demiurge is acting chill, it actually says that every name of God that you apply to the one can also be applied to the Demiurge, because the Demiurge is sort of his lower reflection in a way, the one's lower reflection. It went corrupt and power hungry and became a force of imprisonment, basically. But the Valentinians saw not these forces not as inherently evil, but as forces that got out of control and need awakening and redirection. And that's much healthier. That's much healthier. So the Valentinians didn't literally say, oh, the planets have an Eonic pole and an Archonic pole, and so same thing with the Zodiac. They don't directly say that. But when we look at how the Gnostic cosmos is structured and mirrored each other, it's a very, I think, powerful symbolic interpretation that aligns quite well with Valentinian thought, and most importantly, is practically helpful for us. And remember, the 12 disciples kind of represent humanity's condition in the Valentinian Gnosticism. Humanity's condition, where they are sort of under the ignorance of the Archons, but ultimately come from the one, and thus are capable of waking up. That's us. That's us in our sleepwalking state before we reach higher consciousness. We're just completely run by archonic forces, lust, anger, greed, etc. But when we access our knowledge and wisdom and understanding and perception and memory, we awaken to a higher consciousness and are able to redeem our lower qualities and use them in a positive way and align ourselves with the Eonic qualities and connect with the source and the divinity within us and the divinity within the divine community. That's what the church is, by the way. In terms of Valentinian Gnosticism, the church is not a building on the corner of the road that has fog machines and a pastor wearing skinny jeans who says God really wants to know your credit card number. That's not what they mean by church. By church, in the Valentinian tradition, it means the collective of awakened souls. So it's like a collective consciousness in a way. It's the collective of awakened souls. There's a lot more to this. I can talk about Achamat, who's my favorite Gnostic being, an entity, but we don't have enough time. If you want to see that, let me know in the comments. And I hope this was helpful. Let me know if it was helpful. If there was anything confusing, tell me in the comments. And I also want to know, do you like when I do these deep dives? When I do these deep dives, do you enjoy them? Are they, because I just put out a video on the 12 Archons being assigned to the Zodiac, but now we go into a deeper exploration of it and unfold it more thoroughly. Let me know if you enjoy that or not. Also, just, hey, leave a comment if you made it to the end of this video, because a lot of people don't. And I'm always interested to see who really sticks through and which individuals this is really important to, because this is really important for, because this is really important stuff. But as always, my friends, I want to thank you so much for the support. Remember, we are way more than a channel. We are a revolution of consciousness here to make go viral what the church tried to burn and bury. Now we're reaching millions with it. So spread it like fire. Share, like, subscribe, become a member if you want to help out even more for free downloads, as well as members-only videos. We're having a members-only video right after this in just a few minutes, the live recording of it, called Genesis Never Said That Humanity Fell. So what really happened in Eden? You can also follow me on Spotify for a free way to support. That's really helpful. Follow me on Spotify. Links to all those things, my books and my Spotify account. It's completely free to follow. Oh yeah, I didn't even mention my books. You can check out my books. Check out my books. They're in the description of this video. One final thing that I actually kind of forgot to mention. I know it's getting late, but I want to throw it in there because it's cool. In the Secret Book of John, it says that the 12 eons, remember, so we have the 12 eons. It says they are the 12 realms that stand before the Son of the Powerful, meaning like Christ. So here's what's really interesting, is that Christ and the 12 disciples have often been symbolically interpreted as the 12 signs of the Zodiac and Jesus being the sun. Because what does the sun do? It awakens and enlightens. It connects you to the true source, the core in symbolism. And guess what it does? It dies and resurrects in sunset and sunrise. So Jesus is often linked to the sun and the 12 disciples to the signs of the Zodiac. But guess what? There's an even cooler interpretation, because some believed that Jesus became a new star, a higher star. And hold on here. Okay, so some believe that Jesus, after his resurrection, became a higher star, a new star. And this is really cool because in a book called The Sophia of Jesus Christ, it literally says that after his resurrection, he began to teach the 12 disciples and his 7 female followers. It's super cool. Now we have the 12 and the 7 all being taught by the resurrected higher star. Anyway, I thought that was really cool. I had to throw that in there. Thank you all so much for the support. I appreciate it. Big shout out to everybody who supports, especially Renaissance Fairy, Cassidy, Angela, Dallas, Nusalina, Eric, Sol, Vivian, Tornado, Banshee, Pop Out, Hyper Saiyan, Chris, and everyone else. Thank you very much. And if you don't see your name up there yet, I haven't updated it yet. I will soon. But thank you all very much. I appreciate you. My name is Morgue, and I am Neogenian ad Astra.